The letter didn't go into detail about how she was going to achieve this, but it did indicate that it would be severe enough to revoke my visitation rights for the twins or custody. It was completely despicable. Ken wrote this letter, so it was all rumored. I would have liked to have gotten something original from Janet, but I had to make do with what I had. I printed out several copies of this letter. Mom fell asleep watching Leno, so I sent her to our bedroom. The girls have already gone to bed. I fell asleep on the couch, and there were 4 empty beer bottles on the coffee table. I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and bacon. Mom always prepared a good breakfast. The girls were finishing their cereal when I approached the table. I had to endure some good-natured digging before I could start cooking the eggs. The conversation was casual until it was time for the bus. "Girls, I'm afraid your mother will try to separate us. She plans to declare me an unfit parent so she can keep you all to herself. I have no problem with shared custody if it keeps you two happy, but I won't give up my right to see you and be with you. I don't want you to have to pick sides, but I want you to know what's going on. Be careful and don't listen to any lies. Dad, we are smarter than you think. Don't worry about anything. We love Mom, but we won't let her screw you up or anything." Brittany smiled, and Beth gave me a thumbs up as they walked out the door. Mom filled my cup and sat down with hers. "Relax, John, everyone is on your side." After showering and shaving, I put on some clothes that were a little nicer than what I usually wear. When I left the house, I felt a little strange because I had 3 mobile phones with me. I made a mental note to buy the cell phone charger Ken had given me. I probably won't need it, but I'd rather be prepared for it. I checked into the family services office and waited for the caseworker to call me. I was confused when I finally got the call because I knew the woman who came to my aid. "John Terrell. I haven't seen you for over 10 years. What did you do, Jod?" Mitchell was easy to remember in high school. She was one of the goth girls. The goths had their own small group and stuck together. They were ostracized by most of the other kids, especially the athletes, including me. She looked normal now, but I'll only ever remember her for her pink hair, black lipstick, and dark eye makeup. The funny thing is that the goths could never determine whether they were into drugs, sexual deviancy, or witchcraft. As for Jod, it was probably none of those things, but you always believe the most outrageous things. The sign on her desk read J. Mitchell, so I assumed that she had never been married. 12 years ago, I could understand it, but today she looked. "What can I do for you?" My train of thought was interrupted by her question. I discovered that I stuttered a little. "You look great, Jod." She laughed at my awkwardness. "You mean compared to how I looked before?" Now I felt embarrassed, probably, but I didn't mean to imply anything. "Relax, John. I was halfway through college when I realized that I was smart enough to see the world as it was, without a false facade. I've been what you would call normal for almost a decade now. I'm much more comfortable saying normal than before, damn it, but that sounds patronizing. I have a hard time keeping my foot away from my mouth. You must excuse me." "Forget it. Why are you here?" "Before we begin, I need to ask you a question. Do you have a file or report on me, anything at all?" Her fingers danced across the keys like a pianist. "There's nothing here, John. You married Janet Wilcox, is that right?" "Yes, and there's nothing under her name either. It sounds like you two are feeding your children rather than beating them. You have children, right?" "Yes, we have 12-year-old twin girls, Bethany and Brittany." "Fine. Now, can we move on to the problem that brought you here, Jod? This is a little far-fetched, and I know it may seem hard to believe, but my wife is planning to leave me and wants to take the girls with her. It's not hard to believe, John. We see this all the time. Shouldn't she have a reason to do something like that? Usually when a mother comes to us, she has documents or something else to support the accusation. You just checked, and there's nothing there now, right?" "That's right, John." But how do I know that you're not setting me up because you did something and she hasn't had a chance to report it yet? She may be obtaining medical information or police reports before coming to our office. Just because we don't show anything on our computer doesn't mean you didn't do anything. You say I can't win? No, I'm not saying that. Why do you think she's going to do something like that? I had no intention of showing anyone the email Ken sent, but now I felt I had no choice. I had to ask myself why I made copies if I wasn't going to give them to anyone. I handed one across Jod's desk. Where did you take it? I took it from a computer that I got illegally. I know it can't be used for any legal reason, but it's kind of proof of what's going on. The word conspiracy comes to mind, but I don't know the legal definition of that. I wanted to talk to you or anyone in this office because I didn't know what to do. I don't know how to protect myself and my daughters from something like this, and I can't afford a lawyer. Jod Mitchell relaxed in her chair. I looked at her and didn't blink. She rocked back and forth several times and leaned toward me. Can you come back tomorrow morning? Yes, fine. See you then. Can I keep this copy of the letter? I nodded. Yes. And turned to walk out the door. It was nice to see you, John. I smiled, and she smiled back. I forgot the goth girl and saw a new Jody. I didn't know any lawyers and didn't know anyone who knew lawyers, so I had to pick one from the phone book. I knew that she was planning to divorce me, but under the circumstances, things could change. I didn't want to take any risks. I wasn't sure what our financial picture would look like in the next few days or weeks, so I asked the lawyer to give me a price up front for the entire package and paid it in cash. I advised him to do it the fastest and easiest way he knows. If she wanted a house, she could have it because the property depreciated. It was worth less than the mortgage. I also insisted on joint custody of the twins. At a minimum, I would take full custody. If he could do it, I would pay child support but not alimony. Bill called me on the way to lunch. He needed housing, and I, of course, offered to shelter him. We met at Taco Bell for a gourmet lunch. When I approached, a stupid smile appeared on his face. I know you can't be that happy. What's happened? A friend of mine who works at Community General Hospital told me a little information about Calvin. Sarah went there to visit him. While she was there, Calvin's wife came in with their 2 children. Sarah had no idea what she was playing. Things got so messy that hospital security had to escort Sarah out. I walked past Gilbert to talk to her, and she was no longer there. She was gone. I think she should be home now, but I'm not sure. Why didn't his wife live here with him? I don't know. Why didn't he go home to his wife and kids on the weekends? I don't know that either. Honestly, I don't care. Billy took a week off from work to sort out his affairs. I didn't know where he would sleep since my mother also lived at home, but we decided that we would figure something out. He was going to his house to try and pick up some clothes and his personal belongings in case Sarah wasn't there. He decided he didn't want to talk to her anymore. I was on my way to see my insurance agent, but I didn't make it because my cell phone rang again. John, this is Cameron Wilcox. Can you come over for a while so we can try to figure things out? Janet is in complete despair, and her mother is not helping. Who will be there? The 3 of us and Janet's sister, Carla. I'm not sure what you're hoping to achieve, but I'll be there in about 20 minutes. It was a dark group. I took a folder of goodies with me and gave up coffee. Who wants to start? John, Janet seems to think you're overreacting. She claims that you were furious and made her say things that weren't true to calm you down. She claims she didn't do anything wrong, and you have no right to kick her out. I had the distinct impression that my dear wife was telling a very embellished version of what happened to her parents. I can understand why she didn't want to admit to them that she had cheated on her, but she resented the fact that she shifted the blame onto me. What do you want me to do, Cameron? Prove she's a liar or admit I made a mistake? I'd just like to see a few facts so we can better understand the situation. What did she tell you about her friend? She claimed she didn't have a boyfriend. She just had a few drinks with friends Sarah worked with, and that you misinterpreted it, Cameron. She's had over 80 phone conversations with this random friend in the last month. How many times has she called you and her mother in the last month? They both looked at Janet. She looked at her feet, not at them. Is this like a random friend she meets for drinks every now and then? No one was talking when I pulled out Ken's cell phone. Carla, can you read text messages? This letter was sent to a random friend of hers right after I kicked her out. Why don't you read it to everyone? Dear Ken, sorry for the trouble. Love, Janet. Carla returned my phone. Does this sound like a casual friend? Janet covered her face with her hands. Cameron shook his head slowly. A couple of weeks ago, Janet and her friend Sarah told everyone they were going shopping at the King of Prussia Mall. The twins begged to go with them, but their mother said no. Here are some photos taken during this trip. I handed Cameron 6 photographs. He looked at them and handed them to Martha and Carla. This is not like the King of Prussia, it's like Nebel Grove. Damn it, Janet, what's going on? Until this moment, Martha had been silent. Janet, in every photo, you are holding on to that person's hand for dear life. It's not something you do with friends. It looks like the guy in these photos, Ken, is much more than just a friend. Are you trying to pull me here? The tears flowed slowly and quietly. This was not what she had hoped for. She didn't expect these photos. Here are a few more of the same. I think 2 of them are from Olive Garden, and 1 looks like Red Lobster. I have a few more. Luckily, my loving wife is wearing all of them. I think we've seen enough, John. I'm sorry we had to call you here for this. Cameron seemed upset at how he had been tricked. When I stood up, Janet was leaving the room, sobbing like a child. We never got to discuss the stains on her underwear. I think at that time, there was no need for this. Cameron walked me to the door. John. I'm sorry, we can't undo what's been done, but I guarantee you it won't be ignored. He shook my hand as I left. When I got home, Mom and Billy had already set up a fold-out bed in the living room. It wasn't really a hallway, just a small extra room where I kept my computer. Billy had a pile of extra clothes in the corner that he had taken from home. Sarah wasn't home when he came in. The most interesting thing waiting for me when I returned home was the mail. In fact, it was waiting not for me but for Janet, a beautiful official envelope from the passport department. I knew I shouldn't open it, but I couldn't help myself. It was, of course, a passport, but more precisely, a family passport. The photo was of Janet and 2 girls. I remembered the girls telling me that they had their picture taken, but I never imagined it was for that purpose. Of course, my passport was not in the envelope. I immediately called Cameron and asked him to tell Janet that the goods had arrived. If she needed a passport, all she had to do was send Ken home to pick it up. I would only give it to Ken. I was usually at work when the letter arrived. I would never have known she got it. Cameron told me that they had asked Janet to find another place to live. They had no idea where she was going to go. They seemed a little angry with their daughter. He promised to tell her about the passport. The conversation over dinner was interesting and mostly comprised of girls. Today a woman from family service came to our school, Bethany said with a shy smile. Would you like to talk a little more about this? Did she talk to you together or separately? We were both there at the same time, Brittany said. Her name was Jody. She said you went to high school together. We went to the same high school at the same time, but we weren't together. Brittany frowned at me for being smart. Pay attention, Dad. What did she want to talk to you about? All she talked about was you, Bethany said. Did you understand this from a short conversation? She talked to us for over an hour. We missed gym and geography. They were both talking at the same time, and I was having a hard time keeping up with them. Dinner was interrupted by Carla's phone call. She wanted to talk. I met Sister Janet at McDonald's. We took a corner with 2 very hot coffees, John said. Janet asked me to try to explain what was going on. She couldn't do it herself. This may sound stupid, but if I have questions, how will you answer them? I don't think I can. All I can do is talk, and you listen. I'm sure I'll mess something up anyway because most of it sounded like gibberish when she told it to me. You are setting me up so that you can tell me that you have no answers, only excuses and justifications. I always knew you were smart, John. Let's get this over with. I have other things to do. First of all, she blames Sarah for everything. Sarah started cheating on Billy, and it sounded exciting and romantic. Janet said she had never had an exciting or romantic experience. All she ever had was you, loving and reliable. When Ken Sanders started in Gilbert, Sarah convinced Janet to join them for a drink and a bite to eat. While they were together, Sarah and Calvin often disappeared for a little lovemaking and left Janet and Ken alone. Eventually, they started messing around too, and soon it was a full affair. Once it started, she couldn't or wouldn't stop it. Ken impressed her with his stories of what he was doing and what he was going to do. She wanted to go with and share it all. When he asked her to go to Spain, she jumped at it. The big problem was not leaving you but leaving the girls. She knew you would never let her take them abroad, so she was going to figure out a way to make you look bad, father. Now she knows it was a mistake. After talking with the girls, she realized that they are closer to you than to her. She decided that she would not try to have twins if you agreed to a divorce without any condition. That's all, almost. So yes, fine, tell her to go and apply. I will not dispute this if everything is as you described. Oh, John, one more thing. Janet would like to get her passport. Do you have it with you now? Everything started to become clearer. I had no idea how she planned to do this, but I suspected that she had not given up hope of taking the girls with her. They kicked and scratched all the way, unless she had something up her sleeve. The family passport played a decisive role in the deal. Carla, my coffee is cold. I'm going to go home and take a hot shower. Do not call me anymore, John. What the hell is wrong? How did I make you angry? You know damn well what you did. Do you two really think I'm that stupid? Go back to your horse sister and tell her there is no way she can have my daughters. Since you decided to help her, I'll have to ask you to never talk to my girls again. Carla was talking on her cell phone as I left Mickey D's. I can only guess who she called. I arrived at the family services office before it opened. You couldn't stay away from me, could you? Jody walked into the office with a big smile on her face and a Starbucks cup in her hand. She motioned for me to sit down and apologized for not having more coffee. I think you know that I talked to your daughters yesterday. I nodded and smiled. For some reason I was a little tongue-tied, out of my element. I remembered that the same thing happened the last time I talked to her. Because I was with Janet my whole life, I never had the opportunity to develop any social skills with other women. Looks like I've paid for it now. Is something wrong, John? Apart from that, no, I wasn't trying to be smart, I just couldn't formulate the words. I'm so sorry, John. I think I'd better leave. I'm not aware of all this morning. I'll call you later before you go. I would like you to know that I am getting a restraining order against your wife. I can't stop her from seeing or being with the girls, but I can stop her from taking them out of state or denying you access to them. It will be delivered to her before noon. This brought a big smile to my face, but I left the office anyway. I headed to the nearest Starbucks. This coffee definitely smelled good. Until today, everything was under control. Now I felt depressed and confused. I drove around for a bit and then headed home. Billy told me that Sarah had moved back to her parents' house near Afra, so he was only returning to his place until he could sell or rent it out. He spent the morning at the bank, the insurance company, and the law office. He wanted to try to get some money from Gilbert, but they didn't have a company policy against fraternization. His lawyers said it would be an uphill battle. He walked past the hospital and learned that Calvin was being discharged. His wife was filling out paperwork for her discharge when she saw Billy. Before he could leave, she cornered him and carefully explained that she was trying to get Calvin to drop the charges against him. He was very surprised when she thanked him for his help. Apparently, she had been trying to fix the situation with Kelvin for several years without success. After Billy left, I just sat on the porch and drank beer. Mom brought me a meatloaf sandwich and sat with me for a while. She didn't say anything, but she drank the beer. She said that Dad would come for dinner and stay the night. When Jod Mitchell pulled up, Mom came into the house. Jod sat next to me but refused the cold beer I offered. We sat there for a few seconds before she spoke. I served Janet's papers about an hour ago. She was a very angry woman, by the way. She was staying with her sister. I finished the long neck that I was holding in my hand. I think it's good, but why do I feel so bad? In such cases, there is nothing good, John, just less bad. I pulled out another beer, paused, and put it back in the refrigerator. Could you come in and explain all this to the girls? I get along well with them, but no matter how carefully I express myself, it will sound like I'm blaming their mother. I'm afraid if I do this, I will somehow push them away. I do not want to do this. How about 7 tonight? I nodded as she stood up and walked to her car. She stopped halfway and looked back. This was a good sign, and I smiled. She smiled back. Jod came over that evening and spent a long time with Beth and Britt. Billy and I were busy searching his house and clearing out anything that belonged to Sarah or reminded him of Sarah. Jod started coming to our house several times a week. Pretty soon, she was spending as much time with my mom as she was with the girls. I noticed that she was ignoring me. This suited me, but I was curious. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, she sat next to me. I felt like I had to talk to her. I didn't have the chance. She spoke first. Danny, do you have any wine or something like that? My speaking skills still needed work. What does it mean? I don't have anything with a cork. I have wine, but it all has screw caps. She seemed to think it was funny. Bring me something red and bring me a bottle. Well, the bottle looked more like a jug, but she didn't seem to mind. I poured it, and we drank. Finally, I forced myself to break the ice. I think the girls get a lot of benefit from your visits. How long will you have to see them? Oh, the twins are fine. They don't need to see me. I came to see you. I don't understand. You barely even talk to me when you're here. Not really. I was just afraid you had some kind of rule against fraternizing with clients. Her quiet laugh made me feel more comfortable. I'm amazed that you didn't even ask to see my tattoos. What tattoos? It was clear that she was trying to engage me in some frivolous conversation to try to relax me. It was a good plan, and I appreciated it. I have 4 of them, and I got them when I was in high school. 3 are easy to find, but 1 is harder. Are you going to show them to me, or will I have to look for them? It'll be more fun if you watch, but I'm going to need some more wine if you're going to do this. We both laughed as I filled her glass to the brim. The hunt was much more interesting because we had to be quiet so as not to wake the girls. The 4th one was indeed in a very secluded place, and I admired her for a long time before she pushed me away. She left before the twins got out of bed, but I had a strange feeling that they knew what had happened. I told my lawyer from the phone book to finish the divorce papers and deliver them. Janet will have to accept what I suggest or do it herself. She was still living with Carlo when the papers were served. There was no answer, and they didn't even call me. Several more weeks passed. Things weren't going well for my father. Mom spent more time there than with me. Fortunately, school was just ending, and the girls moved in with her for the summer. By the end of the summer, Dad was transferred to a nursing home. Billy and I helped Mom prepare the family home for sale, and Mom moved back in with me. Jod visited the girls at their mother's all summer and spent 3 or 4 evenings a week with me. They went shopping and out to dinner together, and I was glad for the attention Brittany and Bethany were giving. At least I didn't envy them anymore. I was pretty sure they knew what was going on between Jod and me. Janet called the girls about once a week, but the conversations were always short and, according to her mother, seemed tense most of the time. The twins didn't even tell me she called. Billy's divorce from Sarah was finalized. I had no idea what my status was. He also decided he wanted to start his own surveying business and asked me to come with him. I didn't have enough money to contribute until my mom came to the rescue. When she and her father ran out of money, Medicare picked up his expenses. Instead of watching it all disappear, she thought I should use it for business. I believe she also thought of it as an investment in her future. 3 months later, Billy and I had our own small surveying business. Fortunately, my drawing skills developed into drawing stories. About a week into the new semester, the twins were visited by their mother. They thought they would go to the guidance office to see, and they were both disappointed to see Janet. They tried their best to be polite and respectful to her, but they still couldn't. She told them she loved them both and was sorry things turned out the way they did. She was going to Spain to see the windmills and would send them some postcards. She promised to call them every year on their birthday and send them amazing Christmas gifts. They said she cried when she left. Janet never called me to tell me she was leaving, but the next week her parents showed up at the house. They apologized again for what Janet did but made no attempt to defend her or justify her actions. Brittany and Bethany were their only grandchildren, and they wanted to be able to see them. I had no problem with their request. They said Carla was too ashamed to come to me. She was torn between her sister and her parents. 2 months later, my divorce was final. Jod and I went to Red Lobster to celebrate. It was a rare evening without girls. They didn't seem to mind. In fact, I think they were in some ways happy. We spent the night at a local Holiday Inn. The twins were delighted when I returned home at 10 o'clock the next morning. They didn't say anything, but they smiled from ear to ear all day. A year later, everything seemed to be going smoothly until the unexpected passing of Dad cast a shadow over our family. Mom expressed a desire to relocate to Florida to be with her sister, but she hesitated to leave behind the girls. Surprisingly, the twins suggested that Jod could step in, despite her culinary skills not quite matching up to Mom's. They also felt mature enough to have their own separate rooms, a practical and sensible solution. Despite Mom's absence, she continued to send birthday cards, albeit without phone calls, and postcards adorned with images of Spanish windmills, leaving us puzzled about their significance. Her gifts, like the stylish embroidered dresses for Christmas, unfortunately missed the mark due to the girls' growth spurts, yet they showed no disappointment. Meanwhile, Gilbert Engineering became our primary client, bringing some stability. Billy shared news about Calvin's downward career shift to teaching electronics, his divorce, and Sarah's remarriage and relocation to California. Ken Sanders' whereabouts remained a mystery after a brief stint at a new job. Billy, ever curious, sought answers through their high school alumni association. The enigmatic postcards persisted, devoid of any explanatory notes, leaving us guessing. Cameron revealed that Janet reached out occasionally, working in a travel agency in Barcelona, but remained tight-lipped about her relationship with Ken. Jod and I quietly tied the knot in Maryland, with Brittany and Bethany sharing our excitement, eagerly anticipating a new Gothic-themed addition to the family, a private joke they seemed to share, keeping me blissfully unaware. Throughout it all, the mystery of the Spanish windmills lingered, their significance lost on me.